My parents turned my 18th birthday party into my sister's show the moment she arrived 2 hours late, faking a panic attack because nobody had liked her graduation photo on Instagram, and my mom immediately turned off the music to hug her while my dad rushed to get sugar water. I saw my sister smiling over my mom's shoulder while pretending to sob, and when she whispered, "You were always invisible anyway," I grabbed my phone and showed all the guests the video of her laughing with her friends at the mall 20 minutes earlier, saying, "I'm going to ruin Sophie's pathetic little party." The silence was so loud you could hear my mom swallowing hard before my sister screamed, "You recorded that illegally," and ran to her room. But this time nobody went after her. The backyard decorations I had spent 3 days putting up myself suddenly looked ridiculous in the harsh reality of that moment. Gold and white balloons that spelled out, "Finally 18," now seemed like a cruel joke. My cousin Jessica stood frozen with a piece of cake halfway to her mouth. My best friend Mara had her hand over her mouth, eyes wide. Even my grandmother, who never said a harsh word about anyone, was staring at my parents with an expression I had never seen before. My mother's arms fell slowly from the hugging position she had been holding. My father set down the glass of sugar water on the patio table with a shaking hand. For once in my entire 18 years of life, they had nothing to say. No explanation about how Madison was just sensitive. No lecture about being understanding of my older sister's struggles. No dismissal of my feelings as overreaction. Madison is 21, 3 years older than me, and for those 3 years she has been the center of every family gathering, holiday, and celebration. When I graduated middle school, she announced her college acceptance during my party. When I won the regional debate championship sophomore year, she chose that same evening to reveal she was struggling with anxiety and needed family support. My quinceañera became about her breakup with her boyfriend. Pattern after pattern after pattern, but this time I had proof. This time everyone saw what I had been seeing for years. That smile over my mother's shoulder, that whispered cruelty, the calculation behind every manufactured crisis. My hand had been shaking when I pressed play on that video, but now it felt steady, strong. My Uncle Robert cleared his throat and picked up his beer. The gesture seemed to break whatever spell had frozen everyone. Conversations resumed, but different now. Quieter. People kept glancing at my parents, at the door Madison had disappeared through. At me. My grandmother walked over and squeezed my shoulder, something fierce and approving in her grip. The party continued, but the dynamic had shifted fundamentally. For the first time ever, I was not the invisible younger sister. I was not the one who should be more understanding, more flexible, more willing to sacrifice my moments for Madison's needs. The video had been taken by pure luck. I had gone to the mall that afternoon to pick up the cake I had ordered with my own money from my job at the bookstore. I had seen Madison and her friends at the food court, laughing and taking selfies, perfectly fine. Something made me start recording when I overheard her say my name. "Sophie's birthday party is tonight," Madison had said to her friend Chloe, the one who always enabled her worst behavior. "I'm going to show up late with some dramatic story and watch everyone rush to comfort me. It's so easy. She'll be invisible like always, and I'll get all the attention without even having to try." They had laughed. Actually laughed about deliberately ruining my birthday. Chloe had suggested the Instagram-like story, said it would be believable because Madison actually had posted a graduation photo that morning. The whole thing had been planned, calculated, designed specifically to hurt me on a day that was supposed to be mine. I had not planned to show anyone the video. Part of me had recorded it just to validate my own feelings, to prove to myself that I was not crazy for thinking Madison did these things on purpose. But when she walked into my backyard 2 hours late, when my mother immediately turned off my music and my father abandoned the grill to get her sugar water, when I saw that smile over my mother's shoulder and heard those whispered words, something inside me snapped into clarity. The truth needed to be seen. Not just by me, not just kept as private validation, but witnessed by everyone who had spent years telling me to be more understanding of my sister. My father approached me as the sun started setting. He looked older somehow, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. "Sophie, can we talk inside?" "No," I said simply. "This is my party. We can talk tomorrow." He blinked, surprised. I had never said no to him before, had never refused a family discussion, never prioritized my own needs over family harmony. But I was 18 now, legally an adult, and I was done being invisible. The next morning arrived with the weight of unspoken confrontation. I woke up to 17 missed calls from Madison and a series of texts that evolved from angry to manipulative to threatening. "You ruined everything," one read. "Mom and Dad are so disappointed in you." Another said, "I can't believe you would humiliate me like that in front of the whole family." The last one was different. "You have no idea what you've started." I screenshot every single message and backed them up to 3 different cloud services. Something told me I would need evidence of everything from this point forward. Downstairs, my parents sat at the kitchen table with cold coffee and expressions that matched. My mother's eyes were red, but I could not tell if it was from crying or lack of sleep. My father was reading something on his iPad, his jaw clenched tight. "We need to discuss what happened yesterday," my mother began as I poured myself orange juice. "I agree," I said, sitting down across from them. "Madison deliberately planned to ruin my birthday party, and you both enabled it by immediately giving her exactly what she wanted." My father set down his iPad. "That video was taken without her consent. It's an invasion of privacy. She was in a public mall food court discussing her plan to manipulate all of you at my expense. There's no expectation of privacy. I had Googled this last night, and even if there was, truth is an absolute defense. She said what she said. She did what she did." My mother's hands trembled around her mug. "You don't understand how difficult things have been for Madison. She struggles with getting attention." I interrupted, "Because that's the only thing I've ever seen her struggle with. Every therapist you've sent her to has said there's nothing actually wrong. Every doctor has found her perfectly healthy. But somehow every important moment in my life becomes about her crisis." The words hung in the air like smoke. My father opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Finally, he said, "That's not fair, Sophie. What's not fair is that I spent 3 years of babysitting money on decorations for a party that lasted 45 minutes before becoming the Madison show. What's not fair is that my Quinceañera album has more pictures of her crying than of me dancing. What's not fair is that I have learned to expect disappointment every single time, because one of you will always choose her feelings over my reality." My mother stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I will not sit here and be attacked by my own daughter. Madison is upstairs devastated. Absolutely devastated by what you did." "Good," I said quietly. "Maybe for once she can feel a fraction of what she's made me feel for years." My father's face went red. "Sophie Marie Anderson, you will apologize to your sister right now." "No." The word came out steady and final. "I will not apologize for telling the truth. I will not apologize for finally standing up for myself. And I will not apologize for refusing to be invisible anymore." I left the kitchen before they could respond, grabbed my car keys, and drove to my grandmother's house across town. She answered the door in her gardening clothes, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. "I've been waiting for you," she said, putting the kettle on. "Sit down and tell me everything." So I did. I told her about every holiday, every birthday, every achievement that had been overshadowed. I showed her the texts from Madison. I explained how my parents always chose to believe Madison's version of events over mine. How I had learned to make myself smaller, quieter, less demanding because asking for anything meant being told I was selfish for not considering Madison's needs first. My grandmother listened without interrupting, her face growing more serious with each example. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Your grandfather and I gave your parents money for your college fund when you were born," she finally said. $20,000 specifically designated for your education. Have they mentioned it? My stomach dropped. "No, never." She nodded slowly, something hard settling into her expression. "I'm going to make some phone calls. In the meantime, you're staying here. Pack a bag, move into the guest room. You don't need to be in that house right now." "They'll be furious." "Let them be furious. You're 18. You can choose where you live." She squeezed my hand. "And Sophie, what you did last night took courage. Real courage. Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed of it." That afternoon, my phone exploded with messages from family members. Some were supportive, saying it was about time someone called out the pattern. Others accused me of being cruel, of attacking Madison when she was vulnerable, of ruining family harmony. My Aunt Linda sent a long message about forgiveness and moving forward. My Uncle Robert sent a short one. "Proud of you, kid." Madison posted on social media about betrayal and toxic siblings, with carefully selected photos of us as children when things had been simpler. The comments section filled with her friends offering support, calling me terrible things, saying I should be ashamed. She was already rewriting the narrative, making herself the victim of my cruelty rather than the architect of her own exposure. But I had the video. I had the texts. I had years of witnesses who had finally seen the pattern clearly. And I had my grandmother, who called that evening to say she had spoken with a lawyer about the college fund, and the results were very interesting indeed. My grandmother's lawyer was a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Dunn, who specialized in family law and trust management. She invited me to her office 3 days after my birthday party, with my grandmother sitting beside me in a leather chair that probably cost more than my car. The college fund your grandparents established is held in a trust specifically for Sophie's educational expenses, Patricia explained, sliding papers across her mahogany desk. The trustees are your parents, but the funds cannot be used for any purpose other than your education. They also cannot be borrowed against or used as collateral. Can they access it? I asked. They can view the account and approve disbursements for tuition, books, housing, and related educational expenses, but they cannot withdraw it for personal use. She paused, exchanging a look with my grandmother, which is why the current balance is concerning. My heart started pounding. What's the balance? $4,200. The room tilted slightly. $20,000 had grown with interest over 18 years. It should have been significantly more, not significantly less. Where did the money go? Patricia pulled out a thick file of statements. Your parents approved multiple disbursements over the past 3 years, all marked as educational expenses. She began listing them. Tuition payments to Denver Community College, housing deposits, book expenses, mental health counseling fees marked as educational wellness, a laptop, software subscriptions, study abroad program costs. I've never been to Denver Community College, I said slowly. I'm still in high school. I graduate in 3 weeks. My grandmother's hand found mine and squeezed hard. Madison goes to Denver Community College. The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. My parents had been using my college fund to pay for Madison's education. Every disbursement was technically legal because they were trustees and had marked everything as educational expenses. But none of it had been for me. Can we get it back? I asked Patricia. We can file for removal of your parents as trustees and seek restitution. It will require proving misappropriation of funds intended for a specific beneficiary. Given that Madison is not the designated beneficiary and you had no knowledge of these expenditures, we have a strong case. She leaned forward. But Sophie, you need to understand that pursuing this will destroy what's left of your relationship with your parents. This isn't just calling out bad behavior at a party. This is legal action against your own family. I thought about my mother turning off my birthday music without hesitation, my father rushing to get Madison sugar water while my cake sat uncut, the years of being told to be understanding, to be flexible, to sacrifice my needs for Madison's comfort, the whispered words, "You were always invisible anyway," while my sister smiled over my mother's shoulder. "Do it," I said. "File everything." My grandmother nodded with something like pride in her eyes. "I'll cover all legal fees. Sophie shouldn't have to pay to recover what was already hers." The legal papers were served to my parents 5 days later. My father called immediately, his voice shaking with rage. "How dare you involve lawyers in a family matter? How dare you accuse us of stealing from you? You spent my college fund on Madison's education without telling me it existed. What would you call that? We were helping your sister when she needed it. The money was there, and we planned to replenish it before you needed it." "With what money, Dad? You're 3 months behind on the mortgage. I saw the notices when I picked up my stuff from the house." I had gone back with my Uncle Robert for support, gathering my belongings while my parents were at work. The kitchen counter had been covered with bills, including a foreclosure warning from the bank. The silence on the other end told me everything. They had not planned to replenish anything. They had gambled that I wouldn't find out, or that if I did, I would be too conditioned to being invisible to fight back. "Sophie, please," my mother's voice came through. She had grabbed the phone. "Don't do this to us. Don't tear this family apart over money." "I'm not tearing anything apart. I'm holding you accountable for choosing Madison over me for the last time." I hung up before she could respond. Madison showed up at my grandmother's house the next day. I watched her through the window as she rang the doorbell repeatedly, then started pounding on the door. My grandmother called the police for trespassing when Madison refused to leave. I recorded the whole thing from the upstairs window, her screaming about how I was a selfish witch, how I was destroying the family, how I would regret this. The police escorted her off the property with a warning. One of the officers was Tyler Morrison, who had graduated 2 years ahead of me from high school. He looked up at the window where I was filming and gave me a small nod of recognition before getting back in his patrol car. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from extended family members taking sides. My mother's sister called me ungrateful. My father's brother said I was finally standing up for myself and it was overdue. Cousins argued in group chats. My quinceañera photos circulated again on social media, this time with people pointing out how many showed Madison crying in the background, while I tried to smile through my own party. The narrative was shifting, but slowly. Madison had years of practice playing the victim, and she was good at it. She posted a long essay on social media about mental health struggles and unsupportive family members. She shared screenshots of therapy appointments and medication bottles with the labels blurred out. She created a GoFundMe for her education since her cruel sister was trying to cut off her access to family resources. But I had something she did not expect. I had documentation. I had the video, the texts, the trust statements showing the misappropriation, and I had patience. Patricia advised me to stay quiet publicly, to let the legal process work, to resist the urge to defend myself on social media. The truth has a way of surfacing, she said during one of our meetings, especially when people start asking the right questions. And people were starting to ask questions, like why Madison needed 3 years at community college when she had supposedly been pursuing a 2-year degree. Like where all the GoFundMe money was going when the trust statements showed her tuition had already been paid. Like why my parents had been so quick to use my college fund when they had their own resources. My grandmother's lawyer sent discovery requests to the college, to my parents' bank accounts, to Madison's financial records. What came back painted an ugly picture of deception that went far beyond using my college fund. Madison had failed most of her classes, but never told our parents. She had withdrawn from multiple semesters but kept accepting tuition money. She had taken out student loans in addition to the trust fund money and spent them on clothes, concerts, and expensive dinners with friends. The lies had built a house of cards, and my birthday party video had been the first card pulled. Now the whole structure was collapsing. The court date arrived 6 weeks after my 18th birthday. I wore the navy suit my grandmother had bought me, my hair pulled back, minimal makeup. Patricia had coached me extensively on courtroom demeanor and testimony. Stay calm, stick to facts, don't let emotion override truth, she had said repeatedly. My parents arrived with Madison and their own lawyer, a tired-looking man named Douglas Harper, who I suspected was working for significantly less than he usually charged. Madison wore a conservative dress and had her hair in a neat bun, playing the part of responsible, struggling student. My mother kept her eyes down. My father's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. The judge was a woman in her 50s named Sandra Kirkpatrick with reading glasses on a chain and an expression that suggested she had seen every manipulation tactic in existence. She reviewed the documents in silence while we all sat in uncomfortable chairs waiting. This is a petition to remove Mr. and Mrs. Anderson as trustees of a college fund established for Sophie Anderson by her maternal grandparents, Judge Kirkpatrick said finally, and to seek restitution for funds allegedly misappropriated. Let's start with the trust statements. Patricia presented the original trust documents showing the $20,000 initial deposit 18 years ago and the designated purpose. Then she presented the current statements showing $4,200 remaining and a detailed list of every disbursement over the past 3 years. Every single one of these disbursements was marked for educational expenses, Patricia explained. But none of them benefited Sophie Anderson. They all went to pay for Madison Anderson's attendance at Denver Community College, despite Madison not being the designated beneficiary of this trust. Douglas Harper stood. Your Honor, my clients acted in good faith as trustees to help a family member in need. They fully intended to replenish the funds before Sophie needed them for her own education. With what resources? Judge Kirkpatrick asked flatly. The financial disclosure shows your clients are behind on their mortgage, have significant credit card debt, and have no savings. Where exactly was this replenishment funding going to come from? Harper stammered something about future employment prospects. The judge cut him off. Let's talk about these disbursements specifically. She pulled out reading glasses. September 2 years ago, $6,000 for tuition. But the college registrar records show Madison Anderson withdrew from that semester after 2 weeks. Where did the $6,000 go? My parents exchanged panicked glances. Madison stared at the table. March of last year, $4,000 for a study abroad program. But Madison Anderson never enrolled in any study abroad program. Where did that money go? The silence was damning. Judge Kirkpatrick continued through the list, each item a small explosion of revealed lies. Books that were never purchased, software that was never used for classes, a laptop that Madison's social media showed her friends using at parties, housing deposits for apartments Madison never lived in because she stayed at home. This isn't misappropriation, Judge Kirkpatrick said finally. This is fraud. Systematic fraud against a trust fund specifically designated for a minor who had no knowledge of its existence and no ability to protect her own interests. Douglas Harper tried to argue that family dynamics were complicated, that my parents had been trying to help both daughters, that intentions mattered. The judge shut him down with a look. Intentions do not override legal obligations. These funds were held in trust for one specific purpose and one specific beneficiary. Using them for another purpose, regardless of family relationship, is a breach of fiduciary duty. She turned to my parents. You both need to understand the severity of what you've done. This wasn't an accounting error. This was deliberate, repeated misuse of funds that did not belong to you. My mother started crying. Real tears this time, not the practiced kind she used when defending Madison. My father put his head in his hands. Madison sat frozen, her careful mask starting to crack. I'm removing you both as trustees effective immediately, Judge Kirkpatrick continued. Patricia Dunn will assume temporary trusteeship until Sophie turns 21 or completes her education, whichever comes first. As for restitution, you are ordered to repay the full amount misappropriated, plus interest, within 90 days. Your Honor, they don't have that kind of money, Harper protested. Then they will need to find it. Sell assets, take loans, liquidate retirement accounts. I don't care. They found money to spend on Madison's fraudulent education expenses. They will find money to return what they stole from Sophie. She signed something with a sharp movement. This court is adjourned. We stood as she left. Across the aisle, my mother was sobbing openly now. My father was staring at me with an expression that mixed betrayal and rage. Madison finally looked up, and what I saw in her eyes was not remorse. It was pure hatred. You destroyed us, she hissed as we filed out of the courtroom. Are you happy now? You destroyed your own family? No, I said calmly. You did that yourself. I just stopped letting you get away with it. Patricia put a hand on my shoulder, steering me away before Madison could respond. In the hallway, my grandmother was waiting with my Uncle Robert. They both hugged me tightly. The hard part is over, Patricia said. Now we just enforce the judgment. But she was wrong. The hardest part was just beginning. My parents filed for bankruptcy 3 weeks after the court judgment. Their lawyer sent Patricia a notice that they were unable to pay the restitution order and were seeking protection from their creditors, including me. Patricia had anticipated this and already filed a motion arguing that the debt arose from fraud and therefore could not be discharged in bankruptcy. The second hearing was shorter than the first. Judge Kirkpatrick reviewed the bankruptcy petition and Patricia's objection. Debts arising from fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and willful injury cannot be discharged under bankruptcy code, she ruled. The restitution order stands. You will pay it regardless of bankruptcy proceedings. My father actually shouted in court. Something about how I was sending them into financial ruin. How family was supposed to forgive. The bailiff had to warn him about contempt. My mother just wept silently, her face buried in her hands. But the real destruction came from unexpected sources. My grandmother's lawyer had sent the full court records to Denver Community College as part of the discovery process. The college opened its own investigation into Madison's enrollment and the fraudulent fund transfers. Within 2 weeks, they expelled her for academic fraud and financial misrepresentation. She lost all credits from the past 3 years. Madison's GoFundMe was reported to the platform for fraud since the court records proved her tuition had already been paid through misappropriated funds. The platform refunded all donations and permanently banned her. The people who had donated began posting about how they had been scammed, with screenshots of the court judgment. Madison's social media story about being a struggling student with an unsupportive family collapsed under the weight of documented lies. My Aunt Linda, who had initially accused me of cruelty, called my grandmother to apologize. She had donated $200 to Madison's GoFundMe and felt humiliated by the deception. Other family members began coming forward with stories of Madison borrowing money that was never repaid, of asking for help with fake emergencies, of manipulation that stretched back years. The house of cards was not just collapsing anymore, it was burning. My parents were forced to sell their house to satisfy the judgment. The foreclosure they had been fighting accelerated once the additional debt became public record. They moved into a small apartment across town, their entire lives downsized into 2 bedrooms and a rental agreement. My father took a second job doing night security. My mother picked up shifts at a grocery store. Madison moved in with them, unable to afford her own place with no degree and the fraud allegations following her. She got a job at a call center that laid her off after 3 weeks when her social media presence caused complaints from customers who recognized her name. The essay about toxic siblings and mental health struggles was still up, now sitting alongside court documents proving she had lied about everything. I started college in the fall at Colorado State University with a full academic scholarship I had earned on my own merit. My grandmother helped me set up an apartment near campus. Patricia had recovered enough money from the restitution order to cover my first year's living expenses. The remaining balance would be paid in monthly installments from my parents' wages. Court-ordered garnishment that would continue until every penny was repaid. On move-in day, my grandmother handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000. "Your grandfather and I are proud of you," the note said. "Not just for standing up for yourself, but for refusing to be invisible. Use this however you need. Love, Grandma." I cried in my empty apartment, surrounded by boxes, feeling the weight of 18 years finally lift. The little girl who had learned to make herself smaller, quieter, less demanding, was gone. In her place was someone who understood her own worth and refused to accept less than she deserved. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "Please, Sophie, we're begging you. Drop the garnishment. We can't afford food and rent with the court taking money from every paycheck. Your father is working 70 hours a week. Have mercy." I looked at the message for a long moment, thinking about every birthday party that had been hijacked, every achievement that had been overshadowed, every moment I had been told to be more understanding of Madison's needs. I thought about the whispered words, "You were always invisible anyway," and the smile over my mother's shoulder while my birthday music was turned off. I blocked the number and finished unpacking. 4 years passed. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in business administration and a minor in psychology. My grandmother attended the ceremony with my Uncle Robert and his family. The seats where my parents would have sat remained empty, which no longer hurt the way it once might have. Madison had cycled through 6 jobs in 4 years, each one ending badly when her social media history or court records surfaced. She was living with my parents still, the 3 of them cramped in that small apartment, the garnishment continuing to drain their income month after month. I knew this not because I kept tabs on them, but because mutual relatives occasionally mentioned it, usually with a tone of sympathy I did not share. My mother made one final attempt to reach me through my grandmother, sending a letter that arrived a week before my college graduation. "Sophie, please forgive us. Please let this end. We've lost everything. Madison can't find work, your father's health is failing from stress, and I barely recognize our lives anymore. You've made your point. You've punished us enough. Please show mercy." I read the letter once and threw it away. There was no mention of remorse for what they had done, no acknowledgement of the years of making me invisible, no recognition that they had committed fraud and gotten caught. Just a plea to stop consequences that they had earned through their own choices. The garnishment would continue for another 3 years based on the payment schedule. By then, I would be established in my career, financially independent, and completely free from the family that had tried to erase me. My grandmother threw a graduation party at her house, a beautiful celebration with catering and decorations, and people who genuinely cared about my achievements. As I stood in her garden surrounded by love and support, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed our family over money. You're a selfish, vindictive person who will end up alone. I wish I never had a sister." Madison, still playing victim, still refusing accountability, still unable to see that she had built her own prison, brick by brick with lies and manipulation. I screenshot the message, sent it to Patricia as documentation of harassment, and blocked the number. Then I went back to my party where real family was waiting. The family I had chosen, the family who saw me, the family who understood that standing up for yourself is not cruelty, and that consequences are not punishment. My grandmother raised her glass in a toast. To Sophie, who taught us all that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to stay invisible. I raised my glass in return, meeting the eyes of everyone who had supported me through the hardest decision of my life. The little girl who had spent 18 years learning to disappear was gone completely now. In her place was a woman who understood her worth and refused to negotiate it downward for anyone's comfort. The money would be fully repaid in 3 more years. My parents would eventually stabilize their finances. Madison would eventually find some path forward. But none of that was my responsibility anymore. I had taken back what was stolen, held people accountable for their choices, and built a life where I was the center of my own story instead of a supporting character in Madison's endless drama. And if that made me vindictive in their eyes, I could live with that. Better to be vindictive and free than forgiving and invisible. I never looked back.